Hi, you are on the History Voice channel. Here we tell the incredible story of how one accidental crypto purchase turned into millions, but the real challenge was staying true to yourself. Let's get into the story. The apartment smelled faintly of instant noodles and burnt coffee. Old blinds hung crooked over the window, letting in slivers of pale morning light. A laptop hummed weakly on the desk, screen cluttered with half-finished projects, abandoned tabs, and a few blinking notifications that seemed more like mockery than encouragement. The night had been long. Another attempt at freelancing, another rejection email. Another job application met with silence. Fingers drummed on the desk, restless, anxious, searching for something that felt like control. Scrolling through tech forums had become a habit, maybe even a crutch. Arguments about programming languages, endless speculation about startups, whispers of things that might one day change the world. Buried between them, a strange word appeared over and over again: Bitcoin. Curiosity sparked. What is this even supposed to be? The whisper escaped into the empty room. A few clicks later, there was talk of digital money, peer-to-peer transactions, something about decentralization. It sounded both ridiculous and futuristic. The price? Pennies. A joke compared to the weight of actual bills stuffed in a wallet. But there was a thrill to it, the idea of owning something different, something untested. Like buying a ticket to a lottery nobody else believed in. A shrug, then a decision. Fine. Let's try. Just for fun. The process wasn't smooth. Tutorials felt like another language. Setting up a wallet was confusing, and transferring money through strange exchanges carried a knot of suspicion in the gut. Yet somehow it worked. A small sum, barely noticeable, transformed into a string of numbers on the screen. There it was, the first few bitcoins. Digital coins, invisible and intangible, resting quietly in a folder that felt more like science fiction than finance. With a satisfied smirk, the laptop snapped shut. Probably worthless anyway. Weeks blurred into months. The coins sat untouched, forgotten in the chaos of unpaid bills, small freelance gigs, and long walks meant to clear the fog of uncertainty. Life demanded attention elsewhere: groceries, rent, survival. The experiment faded into memory. Years began to layer themselves like dust. The apartment changed, then the job, then the city. Dreams reshaped themselves in the background, some shrinking, others expanding, but always grounded in reality. The laptop was replaced, old files transferred clumsily from drive to drive. The coins were never sold, never checked. Until one morning. The alarm buzzed harshly, another workday threatening monotony. The phone, as usual, was grabbed first. Social media scrolled past with familiar numbness, photos of friends on trips, motivational quotes, news of wars and politics. Then an article appeared, its headline screaming louder than the rest. Bitcoin breaks $50,000. Early adopters become overnight millionaires. The words froze in the mind. A surge of memory hit, sharp and sudden. The coins. That stupid experiment. That night of curiosity and boredom. Heart pounding, the laptop flipped open. Fingers trembled over the keyboard, passwords dug out from old notes, recovery phrases typed carefully, prayers whispered. For a moment, silence. Then the numbers appeared. The balance blinked on the screen like a cruel joke. Millions. Not hundreds, not thousands. Millions. The breath caught, then burst out in laughter, then in disbelief, then in fear. Hands shook so badly the mouse nearly slipped. Eyes widened, staring at the digits as if they might vanish any second. This can't be real. Yet it was. The market confirmed it, the articles confirmed it, the cold numbers confirmed it. Years of neglect, years of forgetting, had transformed a casual gamble into a fortune. The coffee on the table went cold, untouched. The minutes slipped by unnoticed. Outside, the city carried on as usual, cars honking, neighbors arguing, life marching forward, while inside, everything had shifted. A millionaire. Overnight. Without trying. The thought carried weight, but also emptiness. There was no victory, no struggle overcome, no dramatic battle won. Just luck. An accident of timing. The phone buzzed again, but this time with intent. A call. A friend's voice, casual at first, then curious. Hey, did you see the news about Bitcoin? Crazy, right? A pause. Heavy, uncertain. Yeah, crazy. The conversation drifted, safe, ordinary, without a hint of the secret pulsing in the background. The screen with those numbers stayed open long after the call ended, the glow of it filling the room like an alien presence. That night, sleep didn't come easily. The ceiling became an enemy, mocking with questions. What now? Quit the job. Tell someone? Keep it hidden. The heart whispered greed. Dreams painted themselves in sharp colors: sports cars, sprawling houses, champagne nights in glittering cities. But another voice fought back, a quieter one, a warning. Don't lose yourself. Money had always been a ghost in the room, its absence shaping decisions, its pursuit consuming energy. Now, in a twist of fate, it had arrived uninvited, massive and overwhelming. But who was left without the struggle? Without the chase, without the hunger, without the grind? In the early hours, with dawn still a rumor, the laptop remained open. The numbers didn't fade. They sat there, stubborn and unchanging, demanding an answer. And somewhere deep inside, beneath the shock and the thrill, the first crack of fear began to spread. The first purchase wasn't extravagant. A new pair of shoes, nothing more. Something practical, long overdue. But handing over the credit card at the store felt different now, as if every transaction carried a secret, the knowledge that money was no longer a limitation. The shoes fit well, but the unease lingered. Days later, the balance was checked again, as if to confirm it hadn't all been a dream. The digits remained, patient and unwavering. The fortune was real. The temptation grew stronger. A new phone, the latest model. A better laptop. Dinners that once seemed like luxuries suddenly became casual decisions. Each time, the thrill of freedom was chased by a quiet echo. This isn't who you were. Conversations with friends became minefields. You've been eating out a lot lately, someone laughed over beers. Guess I'm just tired of cooking. Shrugs, smiles, careful lies. The truth pressed against the ribcage but never escaped. To admit it would be to invite questions, demands, jealousy. Secrets had weight, and this one was crushing. The world outside seemed to tilt. Billboards shouted luxury cars, luxury watches, luxury lives. Social media feeds flooded with influencers holding cocktails by infinity pools. For the first time, those images weren't impossible. They were options. And yet, instead of joy, a strange guilt grew. One evening, staring at the glow of the laptop screen, the thought came sharply, what have I done to deserve this? Luck had chosen randomly, like lightning striking dry ground. No long nights coding the next big app, no risky startup gamble. Just a bored experiment, a digital coin bought on a whim. Now millions sat waiting. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like theft. The first real test arrived at a family gathering. The living room smelled of home-cooked meals, laughter bouncing from wall to wall. Familiar faces, familiar questions about work, about life, about whether things were finally turning around. There was pride in the eyes of relatives when hearing about the small job, the steady pay. No one asked about Bitcoin. Why would they? But sitting there, sipping tea from a chipped cup, the weight of the secret grew unbearable. Every nod, every polite smile, every well-meant bit of advice about saving money or being careful with credit cards felt like a lie being swallowed whole. The words almost slipped out, almost burst free. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I'm rich. I'm safe. I'm free. But the vision came immediately after. Faces changing, eyes widening, conversations shifting from warmth to calculation. Family dinners turning into negotiations, old friends turning into opportunists. So the secret was kept. Yeah, I'm managing, came the practiced reply. The tea tasted bitter after that. Weeks turned into months. The life outside barely changed. The same small apartment, the same morning commute, the same job with its slow suffocation. But beneath the surface, a current pulled stronger every day. The bank account swelled as small amounts of Bitcoin were sold, carefully, cautiously, enough to raise suspicion only in whispers. Each sale left the balance still towering, still untouchable. The purchases escalated. A sleek car appeared in the parking lot, black and polished, drawing curious stares. A sudden vacation followed, photos posted online with vague captions about finally treating myself. The responses were immediate. Wow, where did this come from? Big raise at work, huh? Did you win the lottery or something? Laughter covered the silence where truth should have been. Excuses were crafted with care, half believable and quickly delivered. But doubt spread like wildfire in the eyes of those who asked. Trust began to erode, even unspoken. At night, the struggle deepened. The bed felt too soft, the sheets too clean. Shadows of imagined futures danced across the ceiling. Yachts, mansions, endless luxuries. But in those visions, a hollow figure always stood in the middle. Someone unrecognizable, someone lost. "Stay grounded," the whisper returned, relentless. But how? Every instinct screamed to use the wealth, to taste the life denied for so long. But every indulgence felt like a betrayal, like carving away pieces of an identity carefully built in hardship. Friends who once shared cheap pizzas and long walks now suggested high-end bars, expensive outings, things they somehow expected could be afforded without hesitation. Some began to drift when those invitations weren't accepted. Others stayed, but with questions behind their eyes. The mirror became an enemy. The reflection looked the same, tired, ordinary, but behind the eyes, a storm brewed. One evening, in an upscale restaurant chosen out of guilt rather than desire, the first crack appeared. A conversation with an old friend began innocently, laughter spilling between bites of overpriced pasta. But then the question came, sharp and sudden. "Seriously, though, how are you paying for all this?" The fork froze midair. The answer stumbled out, clumsy, unconvincing. "Just some savings I forgot about." The silence after was heavy. A smile tried to hide suspicion, but the damage was done. Trust was a fragile glass, and the first fracture had appeared. The night ended alone, the city lights blurring through the windshield on the drive back. Music played low, meaningless, drowned out by the rhythm of thoughts pounding in the skull. This was only the beginning. The fortune was no longer a secret, not fully. Cracks were forming, spreading. People noticed, people talked. The wealth wasn't freedom. It was a cage built of suspicion, expectation, and lies. And still, the screen at home glowed with numbers too large to comprehend. Numbers that could buy anything. Numbers that threatened everything. The office had always been dull, a gray sea of cubicles and fluorescent light. But now, sitting there, typing half-hearted emails, the absurdity of it was unbearable. Each keystroke was a reminder that every dollar earned here was irrelevant. The secret wealth pulsed in the background, louder with every passing day. During meetings, when co-workers stressed over budgets and rent, the thoughts grew poisonous. Why am I still here? Why am I pretending? But leaving would raise questions. Quitting too suddenly, too comfortably, would make whispers louder. So the charade continued, a slow suffocation, each day heavier than the last. At lunch, the conversations around the table felt sharper. "You seem different lately," one colleague said, watching carefully. A smile stretched, practiced. "Just sleeping better." But suspicion lingered. Outside of work, life had become a tightrope walk. Friends invited themselves into the new car, running their hands over the leather interior, cracking jokes that didn't quite hide their envy. "Man, you're living the dream, huh?" The laugh that answered felt brittle. "Something like that." Old circles began to split. Some leaned closer, hungry for access, for free dinners, for help with bills that suddenly appeared urgent. Others pulled away, muttering about change, about someone forgetting where they came from. The fortune had drawn an invisible line across relationships. And no matter how carefully words were chosen, no matter how much generosity was offered, the line remained. One night, at a bar buzzing with noise and neon, the cracks deepened. A friend leaned close, drink in hand, eyes sharp with curiosity. "Listen, I've got to ask. Are you into something shady? Drugs? Gambling? What is it?" The laugh that came was too loud, too defensive. "Nothing like that. Just lucky investments." But the word investments clung in the air like smoke, confirming more than it denied. The friend leaned back, shaking his head. "Well, whatever it is, be careful. People notice." That warning rang in the ears for weeks. Walking down the street, every glance felt heavier, every shadow sharper. Paranoia crept in. Were people watching? Did someone know? The laptop screen, once a symbol of triumph, now felt like a window into danger. The numbers were intoxicating, but also incriminating. If the secret spread too far, if the wrong person discovered the truth, what then? Insurance policies, lawyers, security systems, thoughts that had never mattered before began to dominate the nights. But louder still was the question, who am I becoming? The answer began to show in subtle ways. A mirror reflected a stranger, clothes sharper, posture straighter, smile harder. The hunger that once drove ambition had dulled, replaced by calculation. Every interaction carried an undertone of suspicion. Every gift, every gesture, was weighed for how it might be perceived. Generosity felt corrupted. Paying for dinner wasn't kindness, it was dominance. Offering help wasn't compassion, it was transaction. And yet, the urge to give back burned fiercely. The wealth wasn't deserved, so maybe it could be redeemed. Donations were made quietly, charities supported anonymously. But even that rang hollow. Money could fill stomachs, but not silence the guilt. The breaking point came at another family dinner. The room was warm, filled with familiar chatter, but eyes lingered too long, questions cut too deep. "You've been traveling a lot lately," someone noted casually. "Business trip?" The answer stumbled. "Something like that." The silence after was suffocating. The air was thick with suspicion, with unspoken accusations. Later, when the dishes were cleared and the night wound down, a relative pulled aside, voice low. "You can tell me. Whatever it is. I won't judge." The urge to confess surged, to unburden, to finally release the weight of the secret. But the image of that knowledge spreading, of trust eroding further, slammed the words back down the throat. "I'm fine," came the reply, empty and false. The disappointment in their eyes cut deeper than anger would have. Alone again, the apartment felt less like home and more like a fortress. Curtains drawn, locks checked twice, phone silenced. The wealth that once promised freedom now demanded isolation. The irony was sharp. All the money in the world, and yet the only thing desired was peace, the kind that existed before the numbers appeared, before the fortune warped every relationship, every decision. But there was no going back. Sleep came rarely now, broken by dreams of faceless crowds chanting accusations, of friends turning cold, of family demanding their share. Sometimes the dreams twisted darker, strangers breaking in, screens flashing red, wallets emptied in an instant. In the quiet hours, the question returned, relentless. Would life have been happier without this fortune? The thought was heresy, but also truth. The struggle of scraping by, of fighting for small victories, had at least been real. The wealth, for all its power, felt like a trick, a hollow crown. One evening, unable to bear the silence, the phone was picked up. A call was made, voice shaky but determined. "Hey, can we meet? Just need to talk." The friend who answered had been distant lately, suspicion gnawing at the edges of their bond. But they agreed. They met at a quiet cafe, away from the noise of bars and prying eyes. Coffee steamed between them, untouched. Words stumbled out, half-truths wrapped in vagueness. "I came into some money. Just investments that worked out." The reaction was slow, measured. A sip of coffee, a long stare. "So it's true." A nod. Silence again. "Why didn't you tell me?" The answer was heavy with everything unsaid. "Because it changes things. It always changes things." And there it was, the heart of the struggle, spoken aloud at last. The friend leaned back, exhaling sharply. "Maybe. But hiding it changes things too." The conversation ended without resolution. A hug at the door, stiff and uncertain. A friendship neither broken nor whole, suspended in a fragile balance. Walking home under the streetlights, the realization struck hard. The wealth had already changed everything, whether spoken or not. It wasn't just the money. It was the distance it created, the suspicion it bred, the mask it demanded. The fortune was real. But so was the cost. And deep inside, beneath the fear and guilt, a new question began to rise, darker and sharper. What if I lose myself completely? The storm broke slowly, then all at once. It started with a message. A stranger's email, short and sharp. "We know about your Bitcoin. Contact us. Panic surged.
Oh, who?
The laptop became an enemy again, glowing too bright, mocking with its numbers. Was it a scam? A guess? Or had someone really uncovered the secret? Nights grew longer, paranoia thicker. Every knock at the door, every unfamiliar number calling the phone, every glance from a passerby sent the heart racing. The wealth wasn't hidden anymore. Not fully. Whispers had spread, suspicions hardened into rumors. And rumors, once loose, never died. In the middle of that chaos, an invitation arrived, a reunion with old friends. The instinct was to decline, to retreat further into isolation. But something inside ached for normalcy, for laughter not laced with suspicion. So the decision was made to go. The restaurant was warm, buzzing with familiar voices. For a moment, it felt like before. Jokes traded easily, memories pulled from dusty corners, the comfort of belonging. But beneath the surface, cracks showed. Questions tilted too sharply, compliments landed too heavily, jokes about the rich one cut too close to truth. Finally, one voice, emboldened by alcohol, pierced the room. Come on. Just tell us. How much did you make? The table went silent. All eyes turned, waiting, hungry. The answer didn't come. The throat tightened, the words trapped. A smile forced itself onto the face, but it was brittle, fragile. Not as much as you think. Laughter returned, uneasy, tinged with disappointment. The night carried on, but the warmth was gone. Walking home later, the loneliness felt heavier than ever. Surrounded by people, yet utterly alone. The breaking point came weeks later. The numbers on the screen had grown larger, the fortune swelling with every market surge. And yet, the reflection in the mirror grew emptier. Clothes hung in the closet, expensive and unworn. Gadgets cluttered shelves, their novelty faded. A car sat in the garage, polished and untouched. None of it mattered. The wealth hadn't bought freedom. It had bought silence, suspicion, and solitude. Sitting there, staring at the digits that once felt like salvation, the realization hit: the money wasn't the enemy. The real danger was the self being lost in its shadow. The decision wasn't impulsive. It came slowly, through nights of restless thought and mornings of heavy silence. But when it arrived, it felt clear, almost simple. The laptop opened one last time. Accounts were accessed, wallets unlocked, transfers prepared. Not all of it, no. Enough to remain safe, enough to live without fear of hunger or rent. But the rest was sent away. To charities, to causes that mattered, to strangers who would never know where it came from. Millions vanished in minutes. Digits dropping, balances shrinking, until the numbers no longer suffocated. Relief washed in, unexpected and overwhelming. For the first time in months, the chest loosened. The weight lifted. The secret wasn't gone, but its power had weakened. The fortune was no longer an untouchable mountain. It was a tool, something to be used, not worshipped. Life didn't transform overnight. Friends still joked, still wondered. Family still suspected. But the tension softened, little by little. Conversations returned to familiar rhythms. The distance remained, but it no longer felt insurmountable. The car was sold, replaced by something ordinary. The expensive clothes were given away. The apartment stayed the same, small but comfortable, filled with the scent of coffee and books rather than polished steel and leather. The wealth still existed, still hummed quietly in the background. But it no longer defined every decision, no longer dictated every glance in the mirror. There was space again, for laughter, for love, for mistakes, for being human. One evening, standing by the window, the city stretching out in lights and shadows, the thought came, I could have been anyone. I just got lucky. But maybe that was enough. Not to flaunt, not to dominate, not to vanish into greed. But to live quietly, to remain grounded, to carry the lesson like a scar. That money changes everything, but only if you let it. The laptop closed with a soft click. The numbers were still there, waiting, patient. But they no longer held the same power. On the desk, a notebook sat open. Not a ledger, not a plan, not an account. Just words, ideas, fragments of thought. A reminder that life wasn't measured in digits, but in moments. The future remained uncertain. Markets would rise and fall, whispers would fade and return, fortunes would swell and shrink. But in that moment, with the city breathing quietly outside and the room filled with a fragile peace, one truth felt steady. Money could buy anything, but it couldn't buy the self. And that was the only fortune worth keeping.